Hello Internet, I want to introduce you to Milty here. She is our Peking duck who we rescued from the park earlier this year. Let's go.
Milty, who's that? Who's that? Who's this?
And you're going to be seeing a lot of her, but to start off this video, I wanted to get into just some basic information about domestic ducks because in our process of rescuing and searching out information about ducks, we found out, well, first of all, we didn't know a whole lot about ducks, but the average person knows really little about ducks and just how much of a difference there is between wild and domestic ducks. So get ready, because we're about to get very quacktacular. So let's start off with this photo that my wife sent me while I was at work. Shout out to Mina TV. And she was in the park walking Chucky, and she just saw this white, frazzled looking quacker. And she didn't think too much of it other than that it just looked out of place. And she just kind of sent it to me kind of like, hey, check this out. And my response to her was, quote, grab it. Because I didn't know a whole lot about ducks at all. But what I did know is that there is no white wild duck. I knew this was a domestic duck. So when I got home, we grabbed a loaf of bread, which we now know bread is not good for ducks, but we had it at the time, didn't know any better, so we used it to lure her out of the water and grab her, which was surprisingly quite easy, but then again, domestic duck, not quite as crafty and as hard to get as a wild duck. So lure her out, and then when she was sufficiently far away from the water, just kind of grabbed her. And she was not very happy about that, but we got her into the trunk, and that's when I took this picture of her just sitting in the trunk, just looking around like, what's going on? By the way, we were calling this duck Milton at that point because, well, didn't know it was a female, and we caught her at Milton Lake Park. So just figured, it's Milton. But then we found out it was a female, which, by the way you tell that is once they are of sufficient age, a male will develop a little twirl in the back of the tail, which Milty now, who's I think 5 months old, has not developed that. And also the way they quack, like a female will have the full-on quack, whereas males will only have kind of a raspy kind of thing. So I posted this video of Milty, then Milton, in our trunk, just to one of our social media local community pages, and just with the question of, anyone got any ideas? Because, started that information gathering and to see if we had any experts in the area. Unfortunately, we only had internet experts in that particular group. And by internet experts, I mean not experts at all, because there was a lot of anger and outrage of, why did this duck need rescuing? Was it injured? Maybe it had a nest that you stole it away from. And I'm just like, okay. I posted some links and basic information, but ended up having to take the whole thing down because the internet experts just ruined it. So that is why I kind of wanted to start this video off with just some basic education so people know, hey, if you see this kind of duck in the wild, somebody dumped it. This is not a wild duck. This cannot survive for the one simple fact that it cannot fly. It's too fat. It's too fat and delicious. They cannot fly. Therefore, they are basically just sitting ducks for predators. So what we think is that she was a Easter duckling. So apparently, didn't know this, some families think it's cute to just buy a duckling, fresh hatched duckling, for Easter, and then about a month later, when they are almost full size, release it into the wild. What could go wrong? Well, you're basically just feeding the carnivores, which is great for the carnivores. Just don't pretend like you're giving a great life to a duck and it's just like, oh yeah, no, wild, business as usual.
Hey, where'd that come from? They're throwing it out?
Yeah.
Okay. Milton, we got you a pool. That was quick.
So no, these are domestic ducks. Now, I also wanted to just mention a couple other duck breeds because you'd be surprised at how wild looking a lot of other ducks can look. They're all breeds, just like humans have selectively bred dogs to have certain traits. Ducks have been bred to have certain traits as well. Milty here is bred for meat and egg production. And other species like, let's see, the khaki Campbell is meant for great egg production. And then there's a couple of others which I can remember, the Cayuga, Indian Runner, Rowan, and Pomeranian. Those are the ones that stick out of my head, but there's a lot more, and they're all bred for different traits. Some just ornamental, some for eggs, some for meat, other different types of traits. And the thing they mostly have in common is they can't fly. So they can't really, they can't defend themselves. If she's unhappy with me, all she can do is nibble. You know, I'm aggravating her, and all she can do is nibble. That's it. So we went back and forth about whether or not we wanted to rehome or keep Milty here. We had talked about chickens for quite a while, so we know a little bit about them, but ducks wasn't very familiar with. The only thing I ever mentioned about having a duck is that it would be hilarious to own a duck, but wasn't ever serious about it. So one of the most important things we learned about quackers is that you can't have them alone. You can't just own one quacker. So it'd be very cruel and very not nice to just have one duck. She was quacking when we would leave her alone for just a minute, you know, even when we were just around the corner. Thankfully, my wife had the brilliant idea of putting a big mirror in the pen, and that cured that problem until we finally got our second duck, who you will meet in later videos. But we decided to keep the duck and started to make the plans of how to use our space, consulted other resources. But the biggest thing is that ducks are messy. They are almost professionally messy. They eat, they crap, they swim, they drink, they crap, sometimes all at the same time. So they like to mess up water really quickly. What they do is they'll take a mouthful of food or just mud and then dip their beak into the water to kind of filter things out. And so it makes a real big challenge to try and figure out how to keep them freshly watered. So I have been hell-bent on trying to solve this problem. I've gone through 2 iterations of a plan, which we'll get into in later videos. They both have failed. So I'm on to my 3rd idea, which we'll also get into. We'll see if that does good at all.
Good fun.
Who's the best little pillow? Who's the best little pillow?
You looking for more? Here you go.
And you gotta keep them happy. Yes, happy quacker. And we have gone through the whole kiddie pool dilemma, and we're still in the kiddie pool dilemma. I'm trying to solve one problem at a time. But all those things I'm gonna get into in a lot more detail on subsequent videos. So this is really just the introduction to our fat, beautiful, delicious duck, who will never be delicious on the plate. She'll just be delicious in life. My wife is vegetarian. Another topic altogether, but I eat vegetarian at home just because it's simpler to cook for 2 the same type of meal. But outside I'll eat meats. But yeah, it is a little odd to eat meat and also just have the same animal that the meat comes from. For some people this is very natural, especially if you're a farmer, especially a meat farmer, but it kind of brings you back in touch with the food. Yes, I know, I'm sorry Milty, but you're food for a lot of people. And I think it's something people should get back in touch with versus just seeing meat as literally a product you buy at the supermarket and it's just there and you don't see any of the blood or any of the gore, anything that goes into actually having meat in your belly. And one thing that's kind of funny is the other duck, who we'll get into, her name is Ziggy, but it's for a later video. She's producing eggs. They'll start producing eggs at around 6 months. So Milty here, it's about a month away, we think, from starting to give us some eggies. And we've been starting to eat these eggs and they're nice. You know, people are like, oh, duck eggs, that's weird. No, French cuisine uses duck eggs all the time. They're a little bigger, yolks are a bit bigger and creamier. And for me, it's been for the most part natural, but for Karina, maybe it doesn't help that I call them Ziggy's butt treats, but she's been having a little bit of a difficult time keeping that separation of, oh, I've been eating chicken eggs, they're just natural because it's a product you buy at the supermarket, it's perfect, pristine chicken egg, totally natural. But now that you see where it's coming from, it's a little weird. It's like, oh, this came out of her butt. I'm like, yeah, Ziggy's butt treats. So for her, it's a weird, interesting reconnection with where your food comes from. And yeah, it can be a little disjarring for some people, but it shouldn't just be, oh, things die so I can eat.
I know. You inspecting the camera equipment?
By the way, one term you'll hear us use a lot is molesting. Molesting is not usually a good word, but in this case, it's just molesting the duck. Yes, it's good molesting. So molesting is usually a bad word, but we're using it in a good sense here. Because Karina, Her dream was to be able to molest the duck butt. It is the softest thing you could ever imagine. It's ridiculous how soft this is. So she got her dream of having a molestable duck. By the way, her favorite Disney character, Donald. So that's it for video 1. I just wanted this brief kind of introduction, and I am gonna get into a lot more details about all the trials and tribulations that we get into with the quacker in subsequent videos. So stay tuned. Oh, quack. Oh yes, oh yes. Quack, quack. You did it. You did a good job. You did great at sitting here and not complaining. I'm very proud of you.